It's almost
Yeah.
like cheating, but use what your customers say for messaging. It's much easier than hoping that they'll resonate with it. What we're really trying to switch the narrative is these shouldn't like videos or something like that might be for good for simple how-tos. This is a story, as you said. This is something that gets someone excited about signing up for a live demo, about signing up for your free trial. It's more just something that shows this is the potential. Like if I go through this process, if I buy this product, this is the value I can get out. When the messaging really hits and really resonates with the audience, it performs much better than maybe the average. Once you hear the messaging you put out repeated back to you, that's
Yeah.
when you know that pretty good alignment.
Hey, welcome to the Message Market Fit podcast. I'm your host, Chris Silvestri, and if you're new here, this is a show where I chat with B2B SaaS folks in marketing, product, growth, and founders about how they join the conversation already happening in their customers' minds. We dive deep into their thinking, their systems, and their playbooks to see how they empathize with their audience and speak to them in a way that resonates, so they're compelled to take action. Join us and learn how you too can shape your messaging strategy and write copy that truly resonates and differentiates you. I'm pumped for my guest today, Natalie Marcotullio. Natalie is Head of Growth and Operations at Navattic, an interactive product demo platform that helps B2B SaaS companies create better buying experiences. In this episode, we chat about Natalie's journey from growth hacking to becoming a head of growth, best practices for cross-functional collaboration, how to gain customer insights to inform messaging, the importance of injecting story into product demos, and the latest trends and strategies in using interactive demos to boost conversion rates. Let's dive right in. Hey, Natalie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well today. Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Awesome. So I have a couple questions about your story and how you got here. I know that you started out as a growth hacker, and I know that the term is a little bit weird in the industry, right? So can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I always joke I was a growth hacker before that was, let's say, a banned word maybe, but no, really just starting out in like digital marketing, SEO, SEM. Just back then we called it growth hacking, tried to expand it to everything. But really, I just liked kind of the combination of the more like creative, a little bit with SEO and content writing, but also the puzzle that digital marketing made
Hmm,
you solve, like constantly trying to figure out new algorithms.
nice. What do you mean exactly by puzzle?
I think, like, the way I think about Google and SEO and even, like, the LinkedIn algorithm, right? It's the constantly kinda changing. I don't know if puzzle or game is the best way to put it, but you're constantly trying to figure out, like, what pieces fit to make you rank higher, what does the algorithm like, what does not like, and the most fun or frustrating part, depending on how you see it, is the fact that it then
Yeah.
changes every, like, 6 months.
Oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, and that's also another thing that I love about understanding people, like the customers that you serve. There's always some kind of shift, some kind of change that you need to dig into to understand them, understand the trends. So that's super interesting to me. So from growth hacking, how did you get into becoming a head of growth?
Yeah, really, I was just, like, the person who ended up getting slotted wherever was needed, so started with growth hacking, ended up becoming leading entire marketing department really just when my boss ended up moving to a different department. So I was like, "Okay, you can lead all of marketing." And that was just my career from that point out. It was like, oh, at some point I was doing operations, at some point I was a chief of staff. It was more just plugging in where was needed, but ultimately did come back around to growth and growth marketing. I think as much as I liked some of the like more operations or chief of staff and learned a lot about that helped me become more of a leader and not just a marketer. Ultimately, I really did like going back to the puzzle, figuring out what does our audience like? How can we speak to them? And then I wanted to be a little more involved into the entire funnel, not just marketing. So that's how I landed on growth.
And I know that the role of head of growth is very cross-functional, right? So I'm always asking myself for heads of growth, how do you guys deal with all of these other teams, all the dynamics? Yeah, are your best practices or anything else comes to mind?
I'm already tying it right into messaging, but I think the biggest thing you can do is use the other teams as a resource versus looking at them as like a blocker. So from the very beginning of any marketing campaign, any really any initiative you're running, if you treat customer success or sales or product as a resource you can pull ideas from and get that buy-in earlier on, it actually makes it so much easier, right? Like they're talking to customers, they already doing this research, makes it a lot easier to do those initiatives and campaigns. And then plus you get early buy-in. So yes, sometimes I think other departments are too much seen as like blockers in the final yard line of, oh, I'm trying to get something done. I need their approval. But my tip would be like, try to get the approval or loop them in early on. And then suddenly you have a partner versus a blocker.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard, I think it was through April Downford, I think she was talking about positioning and using sales pitches to validate messaging and positioning. And I've heard this brilliant take on basically using your maybe the most successful or most prominent sales rep, use their influence on the rest of the sales team to kind of spread marketing's message. Is there something similar that you do, some kind of like mental tactic, so mental control, that's something similar?
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked with my head of sales about that a few times, and like sales teams agree, they just need some proof. So if you, whether it's the best rep or honestly just a rep who's like maybe more into trying creative campaigns, who likes working with marketing, like you always find there are a few that are less maybe in it for the numbers game and really like the more strategic messaging. So just working with them and then running experiments, making it very clear with them, we're trying this out, it's not guaranteed. And then hopefully, once they see success, just having them share the results with the rest of the team. I think that's also an important point. I think that was my head of sales who brought that up. Like, it should be the rep who's doing the internal selling, not marketing saying, "Hey, we partnered with this person. Look at the results we got." If it's working, they'll brag for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. On one interview that I've heard, you the only person in growth. Is it still the case?
Now I'm a team of 2. So I did make a
Yeah.
hire about 2 months ago who's been an absolute rock star, but no longer can claim the team of 1 title.
All right. So I'm interested. How are you transferring all your knowledge into them?
Yeah, this is honestly something I really struggled with at first because I'm a big like doer. So at first we did a lot of training sessions together where I would walk through different use cases or different platforms and just have them guide along. And then I later learned they're much more of a visual learner, much more of they prefer like the written instructions. So now I'm having to get back into the habit of documenting everything, writing out, explaining, creating some videos. But I'd say at first it wasn't something I did very well at as a good learning for a team of 1. Much more is in your head than you realize. That took a while. And then I was like, oh, wow, I need to get some of this out of my head.
Yeah, which is actually, I think it's very useful training, right? Because it helps you empathize maybe with someone who doesn't know as much as you do. And yeah, it helps you externalize your thoughts, which is what you, at the end of the day, need to do with your customers.
Exactly, and I think too, one thing I'd add is I wish I, like, asked before they even started, like, during the interview process, asking someone maybe what type of learner they are, and then, yeah, building that muscle before they start. Because once they start, things are so crazy, you might not have time, and then, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, that's just a good habit to get into for also communicating across to the rest of the company or to your customers, learning how to take what's in your head and share it with everyone.
All right. So moving to Navattic, I always ask a question to my clients. To also, I like asking to other podcast guests just to hear their unfiltered opinion, which is the question that I ask is who does Navattic in this case help and how? I think it helps me really get an idea for what words people use, whether or not they go deep and very detailed about their persona. I always like to ask this question.
Yeah, as far as it helps, generally B2B SaaS marketers who are looking to make their B2B buying process a little less painful. And the how, we're seeing a rising trend in more like self-serve buying. Buyers have a lot more power in 2024 than they did before. They have less budget. There's way more competition than ever. So basically how we help is just help create like a very smooth buying process by letting them see the product, get a hands-on feel before necessarily needing to talk to a sales rep or signing up for a free trial.
Right. Yeah, I love the product because there's a lot of user experience that goes into it. It's something that I've also worked a lot on. And before being a copywriter, I was a UX designer, so a lot of usability testing. So I love the combination of conversion, but also usability, setting expectations for customers. So it's really good. I recommend people check out. There's one thing that I also like that saw somewhere online where you mentioned, I think it was on the website, maybe that it's really important to include in your interactive demo product story. So I was wondering how why it's important first to inject some product story, some story in your demo, and how do you do that?
Yeah, and at first, just to give a little more technical definition of what Navattic is, I realized my first answer is very much the like why. They're essentially interactive product demos, is what we say. So we clone your software and then we add on walkthroughs and like text callouts so you can walk through the product yourselves. And why that's important is because when people hear that at first, like a clickable demo or self-serve demo, sometimes they immediately think a feature guide, like a more of a feature how to. Oh, this is just going to show me how to set something up or how to do something. But what we're really trying to switch the narrative is these shouldn't like videos or something like that might be good for simple how to's. This is a story, as you said. This is something that gets someone excited about signing up for a live demo, about signing up for your free trial. Not supposed to replicate the demo or like onboarding process in that sense. If you put it on your website, it's more just something that shows this is the potential. Like if I go through this process, if I buy this product, this is the value I can get out of it. So we really emphasize these should be short, value driven, and so the person can imagine what they would be like feel using the software, but without necessarily just making them learn how to set something up or use it, because that's not gonna get them excited if they're first going to your website.
Yeah. And how do you figure out what they're excited about so that you can propose that in these demos?
Yeah, I have a few different ways I recommend clients do it. So, one, if you going back to your sales and CS team, if you do have maybe some really great demos, ask your sales team, like, what's a demo you were really proud of that the customer clearly like their or the prospect, their eyes lit up, they clearly got the value props you were sharing. Or on the flip side, CS, maybe you did a great onboarding call. And again, the customer was just like raving and raving about how much they loved it. So ask for resources like that and any internal resources, then you'll get to see, hopefully, if you watch the recording, that aha moment, that moment the customer lights up. If you don't have those resources on hand, we've also even done internal brainstorming sessions before, where again, you gather your sales and CS team or product team, noticing a trend here, and you just ask them, like, what are the main features that really get prospects excited? And you want a bigger group so then you can maybe vote on it because everyone has their own nuances or their own bias. But I think it will become clear with the ones that come up again and again, that those are the ones to really focus on at first for those aha moments. If you have some
Eh,
product data, you could also use that if you have a robust product team, but if not, this is a way to do it a little more, like, qualitatively.
Yeah. There's also another interesting dynamic with this product is that you collect usage data, right, from these demos, things like where people click,
Yeah.
what they do. So I'm super interesting. How can some people use that data? I was wondering, you just mentioned about these variable positions, maybe jobs to be done as well that people can do on the demo. Could you use them even for validating some assumptions that you have, or what else?
Yeah, we've actually heard customers even say that they're using it to validate like new industries or personas. So, some of the more advanced use cases we see of demos, we might create like a demo library where you have different use cases or persona based demos. And then you can see which of these demos users on your website click into the most. So, if you're testing out a
Yeah.
new persona or a new industry, if you see a lot of people are clicking into, let's say, for example, going after cybersecurity, and then you see an increase of people clicking into the cybersecurity demo, that might indicate to you, okay, there's some interest in this market. And then even down funnel, if you have it connected to your CRM, you could then see, oh, user or visitors going through the cybersecurity demo convert at a 10% higher clip than other ones. Clearly, this is a really interested market. So we've definitely heard of customers using it to
Yeah.
validate new markets or even validate what their ICP is.
Yeah. Speaking of ICPs, where are the most frequent pages on the website that you see people use interactive demos? I was wondering maybe on page for sure, but also if you put them on persona pages, use case pages, there will probably be some useful data.
Yeah, we just looked at this in our recent report. It was about 80% actually do put on the homepage of our top performing demos, 80% of those. They put on the homepage via take a tour CTA or see a demo or try product, usually not embedded, but via that CTA that then links out to a full screen embed. I think for a few reasons. One, if you get the full screen of the product versus embedding an interactive demo within an existing landing page, you just get to see and play around with the product a little more. And then secondly, it makes sure anyone on the website, right, if you have a CTA above the fold or in your nav bar, anyone on the website could try it out at any time versus we do see customers also, to your point, the second most common use case is embedded on a specific product page, use case, solutions page. But while that's good if you are trying to create a demo just for that individual use case or product, it doesn't guarantee like everyone on the website has the opportunity to see the demo.
Yeah, true. And you also need to understand the exact customer journey that or user journey that they take to in order to show them the specific features, right?
Exactly. Yeah, usually most customers use it because they want to better educate their prospects or even their free trialers before they sign up for the real thing. So they want as many website visitors as possible going through that demo first before going into the funnel of, again, live sales call or their PLG motion.
Mhm. I'm curious when it comes to copy. So you have conversion copy, website copy, or you call it, and you also have UX copy, so the micro copy in the product. So I'm curious, how much do you think it's important to the two website conversion copy and UX micro copy are aligned, especially when it comes to showing engaged product experiences?
Yeah, I think like any asset on your website, you want to make sure that there's consistent, cohesive narrative throughout. I think a pitfall I see sometimes, going back to that story versus feature how to, is the overall website messaging will be very value driven, high level. And then suddenly the demo gets like really into the weeds of your features, into your feature functionality. So, as much as possible, try to make that match. I think some good tips to make that match would be incorporating like case studies or stats into your interactive demo, especially on the first or last intro or outro, especially one that you've used somewhere else on the website, or just in when you are introducing a new feature or a new topic, a new aha moment, rather than just diving into it, maybe just a quick line describing the value of that feature and even pulling again from another part of the website that maybe goes over that. So I definitely think
Mm,
the most successful ones obviously don't reuse the entire website copy, but pull from parts of it so it does feel cohesive.
yeah, that's super important. I have an interesting statistic metric that I wanted to share from your State of the Interactive Product Demo 2024, which is about the click-through rate. So normal B2B marketing channels, click-through rate is between 0.7% and 3.7. For interactive demo, it's a crazy 8.18% and 32%, 22.5, 25%. So why do you think that is? Do you have any data to corroborate this?
Yeah. So to your point, the 8% is like that top 25% of our interactive demos. The 30% is like our top 1%. So those are the cream of the crop. I think because a lot of what they're doing is following these best practices that we've talked about. But taking a step back, if you're thinking about someone going through your product, that also just shows a good amount of intent, right? If I'm clicking on an
Mm,
ad or if I'm clicking on an email, it might be I'm interested in the topic, I'm interested in the generic messaging behind it, but that doesn't mean I'm explicitly interested in your product. If you are going through and if you made it to the end of an interactive demo or halfway, which is where we recommend including these CTAs, you're probably pretty bought into that product. You've taken the time to explore it, you've seen it, you've played around with it. So I do think that is why the click through rate is much higher than normal marketing channels. I think it's a way further down the funnel asset than something like a
mm,
email or a one pager or anything, I guess not one pager or ads or something like that.
yeah.
But again, the jump between the 8% and 30% is really about, are you having a concise, intriguing story versus if you're doing more of that like longer feature overview. And I think it's the same way we see as like any marketing campaign, right? When the messaging really hits and really resonates with the audience, it performs much better than maybe the average.
Mm, yeah. How long is a typical high performing interactive demo?
We measure it in what we call steps. So what we recommend is 8 to 15 steps, which is really like 30 seconds. And you can have multiple demos that are strung together. We use like a checklist, or as we've talked about, multiple demos on different use case or product pages, but we recommend each of those be pretty short because you're really just trying to grab their attention and show them high level why your product is interesting and then give them the option to explore more. You can always create more demos after, but that first one should really be about like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I'm interested in videos, quick videos, 30-second videos, and interactive demos. Do you think that there's still room for videos in specific cases, or are videos done and over?
No, I think there's definitely room for videos. And this is more thinking about like B2B SaaS website videos. But I was talking to a customer the other day who described it. If you're really trying to show the aha moment of a product, if you're trying to show what it would feel like to use that product, like you almost want the website user to have a little bit of ownership, right? Like I am clicking through this demo. I'm feeling and touching around with it myself. Even though it is a guided experience, you get an idea of what it's like to be in the platform. That's when demos can really come in handy. And since you do have multiple opportunities to convert, which videos don't typically have, it's not usually a conversion option till the very end. That lets them go into the sales cycle a little faster. But I think videos are really helpful if you need to maybe explain a little more or if you're more talking about the idea behind something. Like the overarching value videos B2B companies create, especially the ones that maybe are a little funny or talk about like the topic at large that you're solving, not showing the product. I think there's definitely still a space for that. What
Mm.
we're arguing for is rather than creating like, I've done this in the past at past companies where you create a product overview video that has stylized screenshots, so it's not really the actual product,
Yeah,
and then overlaying with some cut scenes that a Fiverr designer made. Like, versus if you're gonna do a product video, show them your actual product versus something that's a
yeah,
little more, like, piecemeal together.
yeah. Do you see an interesting difference between product-led companies that use interactive demos and sales-led?
So funny enough, we saw it was like a 50-50 split in our report because we get that all the time. Like a sales led company will say, oh, this much just for PLG. They're more comfortable showing their product earlier in the buying cycle. Then PLG will say, I already let people have hands on experience with my product. This must be for sales led. It's both. It's funny how people will say that. But I think what we see more for PLG is there'll probably be ungated demo experiences directly on the website, leading them to a free trial. While sales teams might feel more comfortable or sales led at first,
Mm.
using it in the sales cycle. Like, if you're not ready to put it right on your website yet, maybe first you use it in, like, outbound campaigns or sales lead behinds, and then once they get more comfortable, they end up usually also putting it as their website. It's almost like we've heard companies describe before as, like, a PLG light or faux PLG.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked also about these leave behinds, like those gone calls that you never watch. So how do you make sure that the entire team is aligned and actually consumes that material that's super helpful for understanding customers?
Yeah, I think in this case, we've also used interactive demos to help coach that, but if we're thinking about users not consuming, like marketers not using sale gong calls, sorry about that. What we do internally is we make sure to clip our videos so that they're
Uh-huh.
super short, digestible, you're only getting the point versus sending someone an hour-long clip. As
Yeah.
well as we also, during our all hands, will share some of those clips. So we're already on the meeting. It's only 4 30-second clips, but I think that's a good opportunity to show the whole team these videos versus like just sharing an hour-long recording.
Mhm. And when it comes to, on the other hand, sharing actually interactive demos, arming your salespeople, for example, with interactive demos, do you give them specific ones tailored for the use case or the prospect that they're dealing with, or is it a general one? How do you handle that?
Yeah, what we recommend is you can make a few different use cases, personas, features you want to dive into. So again, creating those short, like 30-second ones. And then what the sales rep can do is they could string it all together with a checklist, which basically just says, hey, prospect, I created this custom demo. It includes this feature, this use case that you asked about. So marketing will create those like micro demos and then sales would just tie it all together and send it to the prospect.
Okay, yeah, sense. So I like typically looking at the Wayback Machine and looking at websites and how they change through time. I was looking at your website. I think this is April 2023, and I will show the screenshot on the YouTube video when it comes out. The website, the value proposition said create interactive product demos, and the new value proposition now says make buying easier with interactive demos. So I was wondering, what's the insight? What's the backstory behind the change? Did you collect data that moved you to make the change or what else?
Yeah, it wasn't any sort of quantitative data, but more like just qualitatively what we're hearing in the market. So our very first website was more like we were pretty direct and obvious about what we do because people didn't really know what interactive demos were. So we couldn't really focus too much on value statements. Obviously, we need to show value, but like more like high level messaging statements because we really need to just educate the market on what is an interactive demo and like our software helps you create them. We were very literal and more just explaining very step by step what an interactive demo is. Now we got a lot more feedback from our sales reps again, from CS that there is a lot more market education, even just me being going to conferences, talking to customers, talking to the marketers. Like there's a much higher understanding now of interactive demos. So our main goal of our website was more take that messaging and positioning stance and a little bit of a brand move of how do we stand apart. And our
Mm.
big focus is on interactive demos. I talked about a little earlier. Now, how do we create a better B2B buying experience? I'm hearing a lot of marketers talk about that right now. I think every marketer can relate to having a bad experience buying software and how painful it can be. So now we're attaching ourselves to this movement of creating like buyer first versus the used to be like company first. And we don't need to spend as much time literally explaining what our software does or what an interactive demo is.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you walk me through a very vivid example, if you had one, of you at a conference hearing something from a prospect or someone else in the industry? I don't know. What do you do? You take a note, you call the team up. What do you do to convey the message to the rest of the team?
Yeah, what I try to do, and for this website messaging specifically, when it comes to like conferences or something that's not recorded or virtual, I might just make a note of it somewhere. I might just write it down on my phone if they say something interesting. But I usually just let it also marinate in my head. But I
Yeah.
always have a Notion doc going for any big project I'm working on. So for the website use case, for example, I have a Notion doc and it's public to the entire team. And then in that Notion doc, like one of the subsections will be research. And then I'll share maybe recordings that I have with customers. I sometimes just message customers over LinkedIn or email and ask what they thought about different messaging. I have some marketing advisors, so I ask them for feedback. And I would just make sure to include screenshots of that, maybe clips, maybe quotes if I couldn't get it in written form. So if anyone on the team wants to see, okay, where this messaging come from, they can go back to that research section and then also when presenting to the entire team the new website, again, highlighting that research component, talking about some of these trends I'm hearing, and then again, sharing that Notion doc, which like if you want to see this research for yourself, here it is. And I found that really helps because it solidifies. It's like this isn't just my opinion as a marketer. This is based on real research and what our customers and ICP want.
How do you make it so that it doesn't look work for other people? Then how do you turn it into a benefit rather than, than a feature, like consuming this information?
I think honestly, we're lucky that we have a pretty curious team, but I present it on an all hands, so they're already there. They don't really have to do anything,
Yeah.
or it's just very
Trapped.
neatly written out. I'll usually include like a TLDR section, so I just summarize the research if they don't want to read it all.
Mhm.
But I'm just making it very simple, and then it's not necessarily like mandatory they need to read it. It's more just if they have questions about our new website messaging.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a problem I see. Research feels like work. So it's even harder sometimes to get the buy-in and the budget for research. So if you could say something to a founder or executive who's not really into research, how would you help them understand the value of research?
I think one is it's going to make that messaging process a lot faster and probably have a higher ROI on it if you know that the messaging that you're testing has been run by some customers first or by some prospects versus just like publishing it live and hoping it goes best. Like
Yeah.
that's almost the way that I've thought of it before is like beta testing. If the founder is approves of beta testing, right? Like you wouldn't want to just launch a new product into the world without getting eyeballs on it first. It's the same
Mhm.
thing as early days when you're a founder, getting feedback on it. I'd also recommend like having maybe a customer advisory board, having advisors that you can go to, have a set people that you can ask that are always there. So it's not like every time you're doing message testing, you have to go out and find new people and pay for some random company to do third party research. Just if you can have those always on hand, it makes it much simpler. It's just an email or a Slack message versus going through the process of having to find people.
And when it comes to message testing, how do you do it? I know that there's some platforms like Winter that allow you to test messages, especially in B2B. I find that it can be hard just because it's a bit more expensive. Obviously, you cannot test with any randos looking at your website because they probably don't understand what you do. So how do you do it?
Yeah, I've used Winter before, and I think if you don't have an audience built up or like a customer advisory board advisors, as I've talked about, that's a great alternative. What I've done again is just asking because our advisors are basically marketers who were either customers, our customers, or are just similar to our ICP. So not only are they giving great feedback as marketers, but I know they're essentially our ICP we're trying to sell to. I've also just gotten on a call with a customer that I've developed a good relationship, again, maybe from meeting them in person, maybe from doing an interview with them, and just asking them for 15 minutes of their time and getting their have them look at your website, maybe if you have it in draft, and just let them give their honest feedback. Maybe offer them, like, a gift card for their time. If you're in person, even better, offer and take them out to coffee, but
Mm.
I think just letting people don't bias them at all, just letting people see it and give their real opinion, you'll learn a lot from that.
Yeah, it's usability testing in a way for the website.
Exactly, yeah. Again, think of it's very similar to how you run a beta testing program.
All right. So speaking of buying journeys, buying experiences, what do you think about buyer empathy? How do you immerse yourself in your markets, in your customers' world, and try to speak their language?
I think two different ways. One for buyer empathy. One thing that's really big is go buy some software in a similar market. Obviously, you can't go buy from your competitors, but I think we forget how sometimes how painful the process can be until we do it. And just pick up on small things that frustrated you. Like maybe there was no calendar availability until 2 weeks from now. Maybe the rep never responded to you when you requested a demo. Maybe a free trial was really like painful to set up and just dropped you into an empty state of the product. Pick up on those things that just bother you and maybe have a few members of your team do it, not just your biases, and see what comes as commonality things, and then look at your own sales cycle very harshly and say, okay, which of these things do we do? Also, maybe point out delightful moments. Doesn't all have to be negative. If there's something delightful, make sure that you're also doing that in your sales cycle. And then, as far as just understanding the customers more, like I think win loss research also really helps with this. So, yes, do your own research, but then ask customers specifically, not just win-loss research. I think too often we do it at, like, the sales point and beyond, but ask them in the marketing point, like, "What was your first impression of your company?" For us, it'd be like, "What was your first impression of Navattic? How did that influence whether or not you booked a demo with us or your first opinions? How did that sales rep confirm or deny that first impression?"
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Oh, yeah, the other question was, once you think you've established this empathy, what I call message market fit, it's basically having the right positioning for the right audience, using the right language at the right awareness level. For you, when it's the point that you think that you got this message market fit, what are signals that tell you that you have message market?
Yeah. I think some qualitative feedback, honestly, I've only really gotten at that point. Like, yes, quantitatively, if inbound lead volume is up, if your outbound motion is working, like certain campaigns or messaging, but just like very qualitatively, if you have a certain idea of how how your product should be positioned, and then you start hearing the market saying it back to you. So
Mm,
for a while, we were really focused on being the market leaders for the website embed marketing use case. We had a lot of data, as you've seen, around best practices for that. We made sure that we had top examples of customers using it. And then eventually on sales calls, we'd hear people say to you, like, oh, I know you all are known for the marketing use case, the website embed use case. Once you hear the messaging you put out repeated back to you, that's
yeah,
when you know that pretty good alignment.
yeah, they mirror it to you.
Exactly.
And the nice thing is that once you hear them mirror this messaging, you know that you can mirror it again with other customers, and it becomes like a full circle, right?
Yeah, and they'll probably say it better than you could have. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to how they frame it. And like I use all the time my customers' language. It's almost
Yeah.
like cheating, but use what your customers say for messaging. It's much easier than hoping that they'll resonate with it.
Yeah. Speaking of using customers' language, do you tend to look at reviews, competitors, or your reviews?
Yeah, that was definitely a big part of our website research process before even the qualitative side. Like I went and scoured G2. I looked at LinkedIn posts that people talked about us. I looked at Slack communities where we were mentioned. And again, paid attention to what were the common themes that people brought up of why they chose us or why they liked us. And you might not get the exact messaging. I think in person you hear it better, but you'll notice, okay, everyone's mentioning this theme. Like we should probably hit on that in some way on our website.
Yeah. Do you find that you can highlight the jobs to be done from reviews pretty easily?
I think so, especially if it's like a longer review. And I would say, if even better, if you can find a review that wasn't like paid for via G2, if you
Yeah.
can find someone just talking about you natively in a Slack community, you're going to get a much more honest review than sometimes like you might find reviews where it's just clearly they were paid for it and it's like, this is great. And they don't necessarily
Yeah.
tell you more detail than that.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. When it comes to use cases, you mentioned listening to specific use cases that they mirror to you. You have a lot of use cases on the website and the most popular, but I want to ask, what are the most surprising use cases that you've seen of interactive demos?
Yeah, our customers are constantly surprising me. I'd say a few cool ones was last year, a lot more customers were using it, like, in their actual product for, like, upsell features. So if you didn't have access to a feature, it's here, take a quick interactive demo to see what this feature would look like, and then if you like it, here's a calendar link to talk with your account manager. That was a really cool one. I think some of the internal training and courses, we have one customer who has a whole course library, and they use these as little guided simulations throughout the courses. So usually when you think of course, again, written or video, it's okay, follow along with the interactive demo. And what's fun about that is you could even have them, if you're explaining how to do something, you could have them like click through themselves and follow along. So really just using it like multiple forms of learning has been really cool, seeing how
Yeah.
customers think, okay, if someone's a more tactile learner, how can I appease them?
Nice. I was wondering, as you were describing these weird demos, does AI play a part in this, or it's too early yet?
I've used AI going back to that, like, how do we source the aha moments? If we do
Uh-huh.
have really good videos from sales reps or internal demos, I've used AI to transcribe that and help pull out those aha moments. And then we recommend our customers like outline their demo. We call it storyboarding before they
Mm,
go build it. So I've used AI to help take a video into a written storyboard.
nice. And do these storyboards include wireframes or mockups, screens as well? Do they include the steps? How do they work?
They can include, like, you just do screenshots of what parts of your product you wanna show. I think the more important part is figuring out what are the aha moments you wanna show, and then, like, rough copy is gonna change depending on you'll notice, like, on certain screens, you might want less copy versus others, but just a rough idea of what you'll talk about. And then again, getting feedback from other departments during that storyboard process is a lot easier than once you build out the entire demo.
Yeah, sure. Speaking of learning, I know, especially for heads of growth, but also for me as well, learning is super important. I'm always interested in knowing what are your strategies for learning? Where do you go to learn about your industry, market, skill set?
Yeah, I think I originally was really big into, like, podcasts and books, like, to learn a little bit of the basics. I think now I really tap more on, like, my own connections. So, whether it's LinkedIn, if I know someone posts about a specific topic, I might go to their page and try to learn about it. Or again, we have our internal advisor program. If I have questions about a specific area, I might go to someone who specializes in, like, product marketing. I might go to someone who is a great product marketer and ask them. I still every now and then will read, like, newsletters and listen to podcasts, but I found that the further I am in my career, the more I wanna listen to podcasts outside of work than necessarily
Yeah.
only work podcasts.
Like what?
Honestly, I will say I also use more like B2C podcasts as inspiration for my
Uh-huh.
B2B marketing. Usually
Nice.
just like silly random ones, but I try to think about what made this so fun? How did I get to know the host?
Mm.
What messaging resonate with me? So it might not be actual B2B podcasts, but I do think thinking about what things that you just like to consume in your own time, like what can you pull in?
Yes, like when you're reading books that are about your skill set or about your subject, after a while, it's always the same lesson, same learning. So it's even better to learn from sources outside of your field that maybe help you connect the dots in a different way, right?
Yeah, it's if you're learning from others, it's already been done, which is great at the beginning, like 100% learn the
Mm.
basics, learn what has worked in the past. But to come up with something really innovative, you almost can't learn from anyone else. You have to learn from like a different industry or a different source, or else someone's done it
Yeah.
and it's not innovative.
All right. Last question. What's your latest challenge when it comes to messaging, speaking to your customers? And also self-coaching question. If you were advising someone else to solve this challenge, what would you tell them?
I think latest challenge as far as messaging, this is specific to us, but like our market moves really fast. It's a very competitive market. It's constantly changing. So and this is like a constant challenge, but just keeping up with that. And I guess how I would give that advice to someone else. I think just having a really strong pulse on it, just making sure you're constantly doing and honestly, I should be better about this too, that like win-loss research, making sure you're constantly seeing what your competitors are putting out. I think like we've gotten into a bad habit too sometimes of it's once a year or twice a year you do a big research project, but figuring out a way to make it more into your weekly or monthly process.
Yeah, great advice. Awesome. So thank you very much, Natalie. It's been awesome. Where people can find you. I know that you write a lot on LinkedIn, right? Obviously, Navattic.com. You have your State of the Interactive Product Demo 2024 report. What else?
Yeah, not surprisingly, I always say I'm on LinkedIn much more than I should be as a marketer. I also have my own podcast about marketing and sales alignment with my head of sales. So we talk about some of these like similar topics on that.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, we're sure to check it out. Thank you very much. It's been really
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks for having
And
me.
I will speak soon. Thank you so much for listening to the pod. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, the best thing you could do to support the show and help me as a small business owner would be to leave a review. Head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and let me know what you think. If you don't want to miss future episodes, subscribe, and if you have any feedback, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, just hit me up on LinkedIn at Christopher Silvestri or Twitter at SilvestriChris. Speak to you next time.